Hello, everyone. Dr. Eames here. This time, I'd like to continue our discussion on the evolution of the marketing concept and talk about two of the later eras, the marketing concept era and the customer relationship management era. One thing to point out is that when we move from the selling era into the marketing concept era, there's some overlap. Now, we didn't really see much of that with the first two eras. The production era gradually morphed into the selling era from about 1920 or so to 1930. And that was the time when we had discovered all those new mass production techniques that changed the dynamic from producing not enough to be able to keep up with demand, but producing much more than we could ever sell at one time. So the selling era ended in about 1920, or lasted from about 1920 until the 1970s. But we see that the marketing concept era begins really about the time World War II ended. So there's some overlap there. And for the longest time into the marketing concept era, it was a gradual transition where there was still an emphasis by many firms and depending on industries on selling things, and others who were adopting some of the newer ideas that were really part of the new marketing concept era. So after the end of World War II, we of course had the baby boom, and there was a tremendous increase again in the demand for goods and services, and there was fierce competition among many companies for that consumer dollar. Um, and so businesses learned that if they wanted those consumer dollars, that they had to be responsive to consumers. And so for the first time, we really see an emphasis that businesses are competing for the different money, the disposable income of the consumers are out there. And so the marketing concept really emerged strongly in the 1950s. And it's a three-part philosophy, as you can see here: customer orientation, service orientation, and profit orientation. The customer service orientation really is about simply that. You're focused on finding out what the consumers want and providing it. And so you are focused all the time on what their needs are and solving those needs and fulfilling their wants. A service orientation really is all about customer satisfaction, making sure that you do the best job delivering that service, whatever it is, so that the customer goes away feeling like they got a good value for their money and they are satisfied. And the profit orientation speaks for itself. It's a focus on goods and services that will earn the most profit and going after those. Well, during the 1980s, business really began to apply the marketing concept much more aggressively than we had really seen in the past. So it started to dominate, certainly, over the previous thinking of the selling philosophy. So that led us to the customer relationship era and really a whole new thinking about how to work and engage with our customers by engaging with them. So we developed the customer relationship management. And as you see here, it's really learning as much as possible that you can about your consumer and doing everything that you can to satisfy or exceed their expectations. So this is when marketing really and marketers really began to refine their knowledge of what it is to define a consumer segment and how do we know who our consumers are. And the idea began to take hold that we identify those common characteristics in that group of consumers. And we've since called it our target consumers or target segment, however you want to speak about it. But it all developed out of this notion that we need to manage the relationship with our customers. And to do that, you really need to know who they are so you can go above and beyond in reaching them with your message. And also, as well, we saw that organizations changed their approach a little bit. They started to realize that there was much more to having just one transaction and making a bunch of profit at one time, or having a customer for their lifetime value to their company. And so smart organizations began using strategies to keep their customers for their long time value to the company, thinking about the purchases and the interactions and profits they would generate for the company over time. So a focus on making as much profit as possible on one transaction became more or less seen as a short-sighted strategy, depending on the situation. And so today, it's a reliance on the newest technology, but the thinking is the same. We want to engage with the customers. We want to find out what they want and what they're thinking. And so it's about using your social networks and so forth, interacting in those online communities and keep creating ways really to have the customer interact with you. So we'll do our Facebook pages and our websites, and we'll maybe start a blog, and we'll try and build relationships with the various consumers who are out there. In particular, trying to serve the segments we've identified that are really our consumers. And so the emphasis really today, and it continues with CRM, and it's an emphasis on using the most modern technology and contemporary media channels and so forth to really connect with consumers. This approach really did begin in the 1990s, and it continues to be very strong today. All right, folks, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I'll talk to you again soon.